Y'all, I'm very excited today because I'm adding a brand new grain mill to my collection, and that is the Komo grain mill. I've been milling my grains for well over a decade, so I definitely have a lot of experience when it comes to grain mills, and so I'm really excited to see what she does. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I teach you all about milling your grains, baking that bread, and more. So as I stated, pretty simple that what we're gonna be doing today. I now have a brand new grain mill, and this is actually one of the Komo grain mills, something that I've been wanting to try for the longest time. People ask me about it, but I've just had no experience with it. But now, she is mine, and we're gonna be unboxing and reviewing her today to see how she does. So fun fact, all the grain mills that I do have are actually from American-based companies, and she is my first one from Europe. So let's see how the Europeans do. Okay, so in this video, it's gonna be pretty simple. We're gonna go through basically just the overall general specs of the Komo grain mill, especially because they've actually changed some things up, and this is one of the changes. So we're gonna be talking about that, and I'm actually gonna be just milling some wheat to see how she does with, is she able to mill fine grains? Is she able to do cracked grains? What all she's able to do. So let's get started. Dun-dun-da! Here she is. And wow, is she absolutely beautiful. I have to say, grain mill, she is stunning. This is nice. Okay, so just know with Komo grain mills, there actually is a variety of them. So you have like the Komo Fidbus. They actually have one even bigger that includes a flaker in it. I actually went with just the standard type classic Komo grain mill. Now, this actually is a little bit different. If you've seen the Komo mills before, you probably are more familiar with the Komo Classic, but they've actually kind of tweaked some things lately, and they will be, if I understood correctly, they will actually be not doing those particular ones anymore. They have kind of redone them into two that is called the Komo Vienna Classic and then the Komo Tyrol Classic. They're pretty much the same exact grain mill, but I think they look a little bit differently. So I actually have the Komo Vienna Classic. So whether you find a Komo Classic, the Komo Vienna, or the Komo Tyrol, they're all the same type of grain mill pretty much. It just may be a little bit different of a look. So for example, the Komo Tyrol is a darker band here up top. So same grain mill, just a different look. But these are absolutely stunning. So again, this is the Komo Vienna, and Komo grain mills, where to buy them is actually with Pleasant Hill Grain. They are the pretty much exclusive supplier of the Komo grain mills here in the United States. So grainsandgrit.com/PHG. I'll also link it down below for you to find this particular grain mill. So let's get to the basic specs, what comes in the box. So what comes in the box is the grain mill. It does have a lid to it as well, and it actually came all together, so there was no assembly. It's not like I had to assemble anything. She is one piece plus the lid. And then of course we have the operating instructions for the grain mills, and then this looks like possibly, oh okay, and then this is just about Komo in general. So I think everything that they have to offer, all the different, even like grain bins. There's even talking about the Pleasant Hill Grain family, because again, they're the main suppliers, distributors actually for Komo grain mills. So that's a pretty cool little book, but bottom line, we do have the operating instructions. And so a little bit about her as far as specs go, and I'm having to look at my notes because I don't have all this memorized. What she's made of is actually solid beechwood. It says solid beechwood cabinetry and trim. And I believe it because she's beautiful, and this feels really, really good. Komo is also based in Austria, which if you're familiar with the grain mills, Mock Mill is from Germany, Komo mills are Austrian. So pretty much you know that this is going to be very, very well made because they have excellent reputations for being that way. The warranty that it comes with is a 12-year US warranty. Okay, and as far as the width goes, the width is 7.8 inches, the depth is 8.5 inches, and the height is 13.43 inches. I have a feeling they probably did this originally in, say, centimeters, which is why it's kind of weird when you switch it to inches. The hopper fill capacity, it states, is 2 pounds 1 ounce. So that's the ability of how much grain will fit in here at one time. And that's 2 pounds of grains, which, if I'm remembering correctly, that's probably roughly about 4 cups-ish of grains, mainly wheat berries, that you're thinking of. If you are concerned with it being from Europe, the plugs being different, do know they have converted the plugs. So these work just fine for here in the United States with our particular type of plugs. It is a 360 watt motor, 110 amps, I believe is what it said. So for those of you who need to be concerned about your power consumption, there's that information as well. And it is a stone grind mill. So it has the 2 millstones inside that is electrified. And so the beauty of the stone grind mills is you have the ability of doing cracked grains all the way to fine flour and everywhere in between. So this is should get fine flour for bread making, but I can also go coarse, say if I like my cream of wheat or my grits, and even cracked grains. So if I wanted to, feed my animals some grains, I'm able to just do cracked grains to give that to them, or whatever else you may need cracked grains for. Now, fun fact about it is, because I guess it is Austrian based, here it's actually in German to tell you whether it is fine or cracked grain. So I actually had my husband tell me how to pronounce the German, and fine is actually fine, even though it's spelled F-E-I-N. But then how you pronounce coarse is something I'm probably gonna butcher. It is how do I say it? Gross. Gross. So sorry to all my German viewers who probably just heard me butcher their language, but I think that's pretty cool that I now have something that actually has the German language on it. I think it's pretty cool. According to my husband, that just means large, but I know that that's going to get me my larger cracked type grains. Now, of course, with all grain mills, always make sure, no matter what grain mill you have, you read your instruction manual. That is very important, but this is like many of the other grain mills where this is not for any sort of wet grains. So no coffee beans, no wet sprouted grains, for example, no like peanuts, no nuts, no spices, nothing like that goes in here. These are just for your dried grains, your wheat berries, corn, millets, quinoa, rye, whatever those dried type grains are. And of course, you also want to make sure that your grains are clean so that there are no rocks, anything in here that is going to damage the millstones. Now, one thing that it does state is that since we know that this is made of this beautiful, lovely wood, things like high humidity and high temperatures can certainly damage this wood. So they actually state in their manual, make sure it's away from vents or other sources of heat and moisture. So like you don't want to just keep this maybe by your stove all the time, because with cooking, that's moisture that comes out, the heat from the stove. So not something to keep there, because you definitely do not want to damage this beautiful craftsmanship. That would certainly be a crime. Okay, so after just reading the instructions, here's the important things that you need to know as far as operating it goes. Obviously, you're going to need a container for your for the flour to come in. So just like with any stone grind mill, that is very common for stone grind mills. Now, another thing is they actually don't state this in their manual, but I have seen it in other manuals for stone grind mills. And probably a good practice to do when you first get your stone grind mill, or really any grain mill, it's a good idea to run about 1 to 2 cups of white rice, not brown rice, white rice, through the grain mill, because in doing that, it'll kind of clean out any debris that might have dropped in from shipping or manufacturing or anything like that. So we will be doing that today just to get a good clean. But before we do that, here is how to adjust the settings according to the manual. Is they have this little dot right here, and you just turn it to the finest setting right here. So this whole hopper actually turns, and then you can just adjust it. So I will say it's not like a super crazy easy turn, but it's not difficult. So as you can see, if I need 2 hands to do it. If I do this, it turns the whole thing, which is good. You don't want it to be too loose, because then it's just going to loosen up as it's grinding. So 2 hands, and I'm able to adjust it that way. Now, they do have a tip in here about how to get fine flour, and it states that you turn it to the direction of fine while the mill is running until you hear the millstones grinding together, and we'll see how that sounds like in a bit. And then it actually states to turn a little bit to the direction of coarse until the grinding noise stops, and that's where you have your fine setting. So we will see. That's a little bit different than what I typically do with stone grind mills. So we will try it according to them. And according to the instructions, we turn the grind mill on first, adjust where we need, and then we add in our grains. So you do not add your grains in first and then turn it on. And this order is important. So let's turn it on and then put in our grains. So first, let me grab some white rice. Okay, we're gonna be safe and do 2 cups of white rice just to see, and that also gives me a little bit of leeway to adjust these settings. So I'm also gonna leave the microphone on during this so we can see actually how it sounds when you turn it on, and also grinding at least rice. Okay, here's how she sounds. Okay, so that's no grains in. Let's adjust it to fine. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that squeaking sound. Okay, we're gonna adjust it just a little bit back. Let's add our rice. Okay, so that was 2 cups of white rice. I have to say, now I think the speed was actually pretty good for a stone grind mill, and that is quite some fine white rice there. Now, I will go ahead and say that I did notice a little bit of flour dust kind of coming up. But so far, that was it. I will say the pitch of the grindstones when it was grinding the white rice was a little bit higher than my other stone grind mill that I have. So that actually was a little bit surprising. A bit higher of a pitch is what I mean. But as far as the loudness, I would say it's probably the same amount of decibels used. Just the pitch of it sounded a little bit louder, a little bit higher, I should say. Okay, so now it's time to actually test the grains to see how well they do to grind up. So this is the rice that we just ground up, and for something like this, we just throw it away because if there's anything in it, we don't want it. So what I'm gonna do is try 2 different size grains. I'm gonna be milling up some hard white, just as I would for baking bread, to see if we're able to get nice fine flour for bread baking. And then I'm also going to mill up some corn. And the reason I want to try corn is because I do like to do grits, which is a coarser grind. So we're going to be able to test that coarser grind, but also it's one of the largest grains that I put in a grain mill. And so we're just going to see if it fits, because some people ask if their grain mill can handle corn. So we are going to test that. After we grind these up and everything like that, I'm then going to be able to tell you what I like and don't like about this mill, my initial impressions, and her name, because she has a name. We have to say the name. Okay, so corn first. And again, this is just regular dent corn, which is what I use for my grits and my cornbread. Okay, so that was actually the coarsest grind, and I will say that is almost where I have it for grit. So you can see where we've got some of that fine flour in, but we also have some of the coarser bits too. So I would say this is actually pretty close to what I would do for grits. I would actually go just a little bit finer to be able to do that. So that's interesting that I would say that this is not a true cracked grain compared to my other stone grind mill that I have, where it actually looks like we've just barely cracked open the grain, like if I was to hit it with a hammer, pretty much. So this is actually a bit finer of a coarser grind than what I was expecting. So I think I would probably only adjust it just a little bit, maybe from here to about here, in order to get my grits. But it certainly will work for that, and also cream of wheat as well, just adjust it a bit more. Now let's switch this out. We're gonna adjust it to the finest setting and see what it does for wheat berries. So we've got it all the way that it'll go. right, so there we have that setting. And I will say, feeling it feels good. I would say this is good flour for me to use for bread making and all of that. Unfortunately, you can't feel it, but you can definitely see that that is how it kind of lightly stays on my hand there. That means you got a nice fine flour. So I would say it does very well for that. Now I will say, I don't know if this picked up on camera, but it is a very, 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 very fine bit of flour dust that does come up. So I'm not sure, again, if this is picked up on camera, but you can just see like a little bit, once this focuses in, just a little bit of dust, like barely anything. This will not focus. There we go. Just barely any bit of dust on here. So there actually is a slightly bit amount of flour dust that does come up, at least on these fine flours. And it also was doing it on the corn, on that finer or that coarser grind. But I would say it's not making a mess. Like I don't notice there's not flour all over my counter. You know, it's not all over the grain mill, nothing like that. It was just very, very, very fine. Yeah, so you might be able to actually see it here. I just swiped that so you can see a little bit of dust here, and that was clean. So as you can see, let me see how it just dusted. So a very, very, very fine dust. So it wasn't a lot where it's not going to bother me. But if you are really particular about absolutely zero dust, maybe an issue for you. Okay, so that was the test of the grains. Let's now talk about what I like and what I don't like about this grain mill, and then we'll get to the name. So first of all, I think she is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Looking at this, you can tell it's very, very well done craftsmanship on the grain mill. These little details here are absolutely just stunning. It's just beautiful wood. My husband is definitely a builder and a lover of anything wood. And when he looked at this, he thought, wow, that is a gorgeous grain mill. And it really is. So as far as like being displayed on your counter, I think it's going to catch people's attention. Definitely be a great aesthetic piece for your kitchen. I also love the fact that being a stone grind mill, I get the versatility of coarse grains to fine flour, which she does well for both of them because like I said, I like to do grits, cream of wheat, so I need those coarser grinds. I do like how she's able to handle corn, a larger grain, just fine. She's got a large enough, I don't know what you call it, like feeder or whatever you call it, holes that feed in the grains. That is large enough to be able to handle now pretty much probably any size grain that I throw at her. Because again, the dent corn tends to be the largest grain that I deal with, that I grind. I also love that she comes with a lid, and this lid is actually pretty thick. It even has a little foam seal around here. So putting it on, it feels nice and secure. It's so no bugs are going to fall in, nothing like that. It is going to keep this hopper protected. So I really like how it comes with a lid to protect this. Another thing that I like is the fact that here where it says fine to coarse grains, granted it is in German, but it has all these little dots here. So that actually makes it a bit easier for me to actually eyeball it to know whenever I learn what settings I like for what grain I'm getting. I do like how they actually have the markers so I can just either, maybe put a little piece of like washi tape or something on one of these to remind me where I like it for what setting. So it is a lot easier to see the fact that they have the visible markers of where to adjust the stones. So I do like that. So in general, it's just a really good stone grind mill. Now here are the things that I quote don't like about it, or that may be a concern for some of y'all. Now, I would say this is just stone grind mills in general. Because it does not have a container that it comes with to really close in where the flour comes out, there is a little bit of flour dust that does come out. And I have noticed that with other stone grind mills as well. Again, it is not a lot. Flour is not whoosh, shooting everywhere. But like I showed you earlier, there is a little bit of flour dust. And I'm going to expect some kind of flour dust to come out. The point is you just don't want so much that it's actually making a big mess, which it's not. The other downside with stone grind mills is, and with this one, as I'm looking at it, I will say it does grind the grains a bit slower than say my end pack mills, but and this is kind of a pro slash con maybe. I still think it was a good speed to grind the grains. It wasn't super crazy slow. It was, I think, a good speed, just not as fast as impact mills, but I would say as to be expected for a stone grind mill. The other con is this is one of the more expensive grain mills. If I'm remembering right, whenever I got her, she was around $600 through Pleasant Hill Grain, which is one of the more pricey grain mills out on the market. But you know, you do get what you pay for. It is also coming from Europe. This is not an American-based company and certainly not American-made. It is made and based in Austria. So that might, you know, bother some people. And of course, the Komo grain mills are frequently on back order, especially this year where grain mills overall in 2025 have frequently been going in and out of stock, especially with the Komo grain mills, since they're coming from Europe, you know, they got to travel overseas. And so you will more than likely have to wait even 2, maybe 3 months for your grain mill when you order them. And that's kind of just normal. What I've seen even the past few years that I've been aware of the Komo grain mills is they usually are on a bit of back order. You know, there is that. Overall, do I recommend the grain mill, the Komo grain mill? I do. I've heard other people say they really like the Komo grain mill. This is actually one that not many people know about as much as, say, our Nutrimill or Mock Mill type grain mills. But so far, I really like her. I'm looking forward to really using her more. She is just beautiful. Like I want to keep her out here in my kitchen, not store her away in my grain milling station. So now to reveal the name of the beautiful Komo grain mill. So if you've been around this channel long enough, you know that I name my grain mills and my mixers, and they always stick to the theme of starting with the letter of whatever company the grain mill's from. And so in this case, the Komo grain mill, I have named her the lovely Miss Katharina. I wanted to stick with more of a German type name to honor her origins, as well as sticking with a K for the Komo grain mill. So she's the lovely Miss Katharina, a beautiful name for a beautiful grain mill. So there you have it, y'all, with the review of the Komo Classic grain mill. I will link her down below in the description box. Again, the Komo grain mill has a line of all kinds of grain mills, including flakers, and different sizes for the grain mills, which is really great. So I will link them down below. And do let me know in the comments below if you have the Komo grain mill, how do you like it? And let me know if you would also like to see a video where I actually compare the Komo grain mill to my other stone grind mill, which is the Nutrimill Harvest. I think that might make an interesting video, so let me know in the comments below. And if you are interested in actually a review of the Nutrimill Harvest, another stone grind mill, you can check out this video here. And as always, I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye!